Hi, welcome back to Echoes from the Satellite. I'm your host, Karen. And today I want to talk about something kind of following up on an episode I did uh, just a few weeks ago about George Orwell's 1984. And I think at some point in that episode, I said that the book was a very disturbing book. And I was thinking about that, and I kind of want to put it in perspective because 1984 was disturbing in the sense that while reading it, I could draw a lot of connections to things that are happening now, politically, say. And I don't want to go too deep into that, but the whole idea of sort of, um, you know, government overreach, um, being watched all the time, being told what to think, all that. And I think, people have seen these sort of parallels with 1984 in a lot of different time periods. And so seeing that connection can be kind of disturbing. But I have certainly read other books that were much more disturbing in a much more visceral way. And so I just wanted to kind of briefly touch on those because I really don't want to go back and relive those books. But I know we probably all, as readers, have had those books where you may be reading them and they're so disturbing, you think to yourself, do I want to keep reading this book? Why am I reading this book? So I'll just touch on a few here. Um, One of the first that comes to mind is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. This was actually turned into a motion picture, and the person I went to the movie with, because I had read the book before we went to see the movie, turned to me afterwards and said, "Why would you take me to this movie?" And yeah, it's a good question. Um, the book, if you haven't read it, it's a post-apocalyptic novel. We're never really told exactly the nature of the apocalypse. I kind of read it as it could have either been a nuclear apocalypse, it could have been a meteor, but suffice to say that or Earth's climate is basically falling apart. You can't grow any food, and so people are starving, and society has basically collapsed. And it's really a story of a father and son, and what the father who is dying is willing to do to keep his son alive. And unfortunately, there are a lot of other people who are willing to do a lot of really horrific things. And there were probably at least two or three times when I read this book, and this is many years ago, two or three times when I read this book where I put the book down for days at a time because things that happened in the book, and we're talking about humanity declining into such a state of savagery that it just was extremely shocking and really a depressing read. Um, so that book for me was one of the most disturbing books I ever read. Another book that really got to me, but didn't get to me, I think, until much later in the book. This was a book that a friend gave me, said, "Hi, you should read this book." So this was a science fiction novel called The Sparrow by Mary Dora Russell. This came out, I think, in the late 90s. Um, and to summarize, essentially, um, alien life is discovered on this other planet. It's sort of a first contact novel, and it involves these Jesuit priests who go to this planet to make contact with this alien species. And a lot of the novel is, fine, but the main character, at a certain point, a lot of it's in flashback, and something horrible has happened to this priest, but you don't really understand what. And then later in the novel, you find out these horrific acts were carried out on this priest by the aliens, and it is just exceedingly gruesome and horrific. to the point where I was like, why did you have me read this? It was really rough. I have a lot of problems with books that have torture. I've seen a lot of books in the last 20 years with things like genital mutilation, things like that. It really bothers me. So yeah, that was the Sparrow was a very tough read towards the end there. But when thinking about this, there's one book that comes to mind that was not only, and I finished this book. This book, I'll tell you how this came about. This book, when I think about it, it is disturbing and weird. And I had to kind of look up, like, well, how did this book come to be? And I still have this book. And I kind of question, why do I still have this book? It's so freaking nasty. The book I'm talking about is Philip Jose Farmer's A Feast Unknown. If you never heard of this book, uh, it is considered a very controversial, very bizarre fantasy novel. Um, Now, Philip Jose Farmer is known for his work with Tarzan and Doc Savage. And I will say that I did pick this up and I picked this up in uh, my early 20s. It was right after college. Uh, a friend and I were doing a lot of road trips. We were looking for jobs after college, and so we were driving around together, and so we were reading to each other. And we had two books. We were reading Stephen King's The Stand as we were driving, and then I picked this up in a store. I thought, Tarzan, Doc Savage. It looks kind of cool. When I was a kid, I liked to read the Doc Savage novels. These novels were always in bookstores and used bookstores. Um, I think I probably got into it. Marvel Comics had a Doc Savage comic for a while. That might have been the way I got into it. Not sure. But I had heard of Philip Jose Farmer before because one of the books I picked up as a kid when I was reading all this Doc Savage stuff is this book, Doc Savage, His Apocalyptic Life by Philip Jose Farmer. And this was like not only a fake biography of Doc Savage, but if you're aware of like Star Trek always had like technical manuals and all this sort of meta stuff around Star Trek. That's what this Doc Savage book was. It was all meta. It had biographies of Doc Savage and his crew and his lair and all this stuff. So I ate all that stuff up. So I was a Doc Savage fan. I'd read a few Tarzan books too, but I really gravitated to Doc Savage. So anyway, we're on the road trip. I see this book. Oh, this is kind of cool. It could be fun. Oh, I was so wrong. So A Feast Unknown was originally published by Essex House in 1969. I'll try to get some covers up here. The edition I have is from 1975, from Quartet Books, and I think there were a few other, hardcover editions. Now, Philip Jose Farmer also created what they call the Wold Newton universe, and this brought in not only Doc Savage and Tarzan, but they brought in other pulp characters like the Shadow, and creating this expanded universe showing that they're all sort of related. And this book, though, is not. I don't think it's really considered to be a part of that for good reason, because this book is semi-pornographic. Well, no, I think it's actually pornographic. Um, in this story, Tarzan is called Lord Grandrith, and Doc Savage is Doc Caliban. So they kind of changed the names up, maybe to avoid lawsuits. I don't know. And both men have been taking these elixirs given by this mysterious group called the Nine, so that they can be immortal. But over time, apparently, they can no longer. I want to say this such that I don't get blocked by anybody, but they can no longer become aroused unless they are committing acts of violence. Okay, so that's one thing going on. And I gotta say, when I was reading this book, it was like a car crash. I could not look away from it. There are a lot of really gross things going on, as you might expect, because they get into fights, they're killing different people, and then these bizarre sexual things are described. I went back and looked at this book today because I hadn't looked at it in a long time. And quite honestly, it was kind of nauseating. It really was so disturbing, all the weird, weird sexual stuff. I went and looked up a few reviews, and the comments, the contemporary reviews essentially took it as a satire on Pulp Fiction. But some said straight up that, this publishing house, Essex, was known for publishing a lot of porn. So maybe this was just a way to make a buck. I don't know. Um, I don't know that I would recommend that anybody pick this up. If you have a strong stomach, if like sort of you know, pulp erotica is your thing, go for it. For me, looking at it again, it was just so over the top nasty. I was like, I don't know, should I keep it just as an oddity in my collection, or should I, put it out there in the ether? But anyway, just a really strange book. And far more disturbing than 1984. 1984 as a template for society, horrible, right? I don't want to go there, but just reading the A Feast Unknown, much more stomach turning than anything in 1984. So anyway, just thought I would share that. Yeah, a few books there that are definitely hard going for yours truly. But I would be interested, what are those books that you've read that maybe you had to stop, maybe you couldn't complete just because it was too much, too over the top, too rough. Let me know your thoughts, and yeah, just let's see where it goes. But yeah, no, I don't know that I could recommend any of these books to anybody just because they're so rough. But I'm curious to see, what you have thought. Have you read A Feast Unknown or The Road or The Sparrow? Um, please share. So anyway, that's it for this week. As always, I hope everyone's doing well. Take care, and thanks for watching. I'll see you again real soon.